On the night of July 17, 1918, Bolshevik secret police led Tsar Nicholas II and his family into the basement of a requisitioned mansion. Within minutes, the small, locked room became the site of a chaotic and brutal execution. This photograph shows the aftermath inside the Ipatiev house in Yekaterinburg. Bullets gouged the plaster and tore through the wallpaper. For years, the Soviet leadership systematically suppressed the details of what happened here, claiming at first that only the Tsar had been killed. Official narratives branded the Romanovs as enemies of the working class and bloody oppressors. The communist regime worked to erase their cultural legacy, eventually bulldozing the Ipatiev house entirely in 1977. Today, that same site is home to a massive cathedral dedicated to the family's memory. The once hidden execution site has been transformed into a center of state-sanctioned pilgrimage. This shift from a secret burial to a gilded cathedral marks a broader effort to reorganize the Russian national story. To understand how a murdered dynasty became a modern icon is to look at how the state currently uses the past to define its authority. After the shooting stopped, the bodies were stripped and mutilated with acid. The Bolsheviks burned the remains and hid them in a forest to prevent the gravesite from ever becoming a place of royalist veneration. Early investigations by anti-Bolshevik forces found personal belongings and soil samples, but they failed to locate the actual burial pit. This lack of physical evidence fueled decades of rumors that some members of the family might have survived. In the late 1970s, an amateur investigator secretly located the mass grave, keeping the discovery quiet until the fall of the Soviet Union. By the 1990s, the new Russian government finally authorized an official exhumation. To confirm the identities, international forensic teams compared DNA from the bones against the genetic markers of surviving European royalty. The results provided a definitive match to the Romanov line. In 1998, 80 years after their murder, the remains were interred at the Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg. The state funeral was attended by Russia's new political elite and members of the Romanov family from around the world. Recovering the physical bodies forced the Russian Federation to address the historical record. The state had to finally confront the unresolved crimes and ideological ghosts left behind by the Soviet era. Inside the Russian Orthodox Church, the proposal for canonization sparked fierce debate. Critics argued that Nicholas II was a weak ruler whose personal shortcomings and political failures had directly triggered the revolution. A martyr is typically defined as someone killed specifically for refusing to renounce their religious faith. The Romanovs did not easily fit this definition. Their execution was a political assassination aimed at extinguishing a dynasty rather than an act of religious persecution. To bridge this gap, the Church used a specific category of sainthood, the Passion Bearer. This title is reserved for those who face physical suffering and death at the hands of political opponents with Christ-like patience and meekness. This designation allowed the Moscow Patriarchate to officially canonize the family in the year 2000. By focusing on their final months of imprisonment and their quiet acceptance of death, the Church separated the Tsar's political record from his personal piety, creating a religious icon that bypassed his historical failures. Even as they were venerated in churches, the Romanovs remained criminals in the eyes of the law. Under international protocol, the modern Russian Federation is the direct legal successor to the Soviet Union. This legal continuity meant that Soviet criminal charges and execution orders remained valid unless a modern court explicitly overturned them. The Tsar and his family were still technically enemies of the state. For years, the Prosecutor General's office rejected rehabilitation petitions. They argued the execution was an act of premeditated murder without an official court warrant, which ironically meant it didn't qualify as state-sponsored political repression under existing law. In 2008, the Russian Supreme Court finally resolved the paradox. The court overturned the previous rulings and formally declared the imperial family victims of unlawful state political repression. Aligning the legal record with the family's religious status was a strategic necessity. By branding the execution as state terror, the government legally negated the historical justifications the Bolsheviks used to launch the 1917 revolution. Today, the rehabilitated Romanov legacy is integrated into the political identity of the Russian state. Sites associated with the family's final days have been transformed into major cultural landmarks. The Ganina Yama monastery, built where the bodies were first hidden, now draws over 100,000 visitors annually. Across public life, pre-revolutionary imperial symbols have been restored to prominence. Monuments to the Tsars now stand in cities from the Baltic to the Pacific, and the Romanov double-headed eagle serves as the national symbol. This is a coordinated effort between the secular government and the Orthodox Church. Together, they promote a unified, devotional history that portrays the fall of the monarchy as an act of betrayal. Incorporating these imperial aesthetics allows the Kremlin to wrap modern political authority in the language of ancient tradition and divine right. There is no intention of restoring the literal monarchy or returning power to a Romanov descendant. Instead, the state is building a narrative of a 1,000-year tradition. It fuses the Tsarist, Soviet, and post-Soviet eras into a single, unbroken timeline of Russian power. Smoothing over past ideologies validates a centralized, autocratic present, suggesting the underlying nature of Russian governance remains unchanged. The veneration of the Romanovs now extends across religious and civic life, where the family serves as a focal point for a new national identity. The Romanovs' evolution into sainted martyrs suggests that in modern Russia, the past is a functional asset, a record reshaped to meet the needs of the current state. This shift from a secret burial to a gilded cathedral marks a broader effort to reorganize the Russian national story. To understand how a murdered dynasty became a modern icon is to look at how the state currently uses the past to define its authority. Thank you for watching this video from the Hoylik School of History. Please like and subscribe, as it really helps me build this channel.